Welcome into the Volquest Power Hour. Chad Withrow here with you in the Nashville office of Volquest.com. Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, Austin Price on with us as well. And guys, a big day for Tennessee athletics, naming new athletics director Danny White and the introductory press conference today. I guess we'll start with first impressions of the new head man of Vols athletics. Brent, let's start with you.
Well, the first thing that struck me is he didn't wear a tie. And I don't think that's a negative, but I mean, it's one of those things where, younger guy and, he kind of was tried to be a little more casual, I thought. I thought he was very conversational. It was not a scripted out. He did not have a written out script, but his message was pretty clear. And maybe the most intriguing message was his public challenge to the Tennessee fan base to be positive and to not drag the negativity that's out there. He's very cognizant of that stuff. He's never been afraid to engage with people on Twitter about those types of things. So I thought that was a couple of immediate things that jumped out to mind to me.
Austin, what about you?
Well, for me, I just thought, Brent, stole my thunder because everybody knows I've harped on this and argued with the general's quarters for a month and a half about what the negativity, whether it be on message boards, Twitter, or whatever, can do to kids. I mean, you just don't know what they're battling through, and they read it all. Like, Jeremy Pruitt or Tennessee's next head coach or assistant coaches, they don't necessarily see all that stuff, but the student athlete does. They're sitting there watching everything unfold. So, I think, hey, listen, there are going to be times where people are going to be negative. There's no way to squash that. But if you, as I told Rob in the 2-minute drill, if you cut it by half, how much does that change the narrative about things? I think it drastically changes it if you cut that stuff in half. So, I'm with you. I thought that he did a remarkable job of hitting the talking points everybody wants to hear. I thought it be very interesting that he mentioned that, people that were on the hot boards at my previous job hires weren't the ones that we hired. I thought that was very interesting. To me to note, hey, just because we've got a hot board out there means nothing. It means nothing to this guy.
Did you guys, and Rob, I want to get your reaction to just Danny White in general, but was there a different sense about the direction of athletics with Danny White? And Rob, I'll start with you on this one, just with his energy and what he had to say about the program. Was this more of the standard trope of what you hear from an incoming athletic director, or did something feel different with him?
I think the whole thing felt different, Chad, and I made this point to Austin and Brent. You're a Vol historian, but I mean, is this the first time in history of the athletic department that Tennessee went out and hired an athletic director that other schools around the conference, around the nation will be like, man, I wish we'd gotten that guy. I mean, other than Dave Hart, who they plucked out of semi-retirement at Alabama, who was a number 2 guy, Tennessee has never made this kind of hire. Bob Woodruff back in the prehistoric ages was a former player, coached, it was in the admin. Doug Dickey was a former head football coach. Mike Hamilton, you'll never meet a nicer human being, but he fell backwards into the job when Tennessee couldn't hire anybody to replace Dickey. You go from Mike to, I mentioned Dave Hart, John Curry, well respected in the industry, but nobody would call him a rock star. He got this job, I think, primarily because of his experience here in the past. And then, Philip was not just part of the family, he was the grandfather of the family. So for the first time ever, Tennessee goes out and makes a splash hire and gets, a guy that is widely regarded as a rising star in college athletics. That's what jumped out to me today watching Mike White.
Well, and I think too, Chad, I mean to interrupt you there, but I think too is this is where Tennessee's targeted. This is where Tennessee went. I think the search firm totally reached out to some other candidates to see their interest. But I had a chance to get a quick question or a quick visit in with the chancellor as she walked out the door today after the press conference. And I said, honestly, I mean, you really never talked to anybody else? And she said, no. She said, the best advice I got from somebody, because she'd never conducted a search like this before. She'd always hired academic people, and they have to go before committees and public forums and everything else. So she goes, I've never really done one that's been kind of in silence, if you will. And she said, the best advice I got was pick who you want and go make them tell you no. And she said, I wasn't going to let him tell me no. And as a result of that, he's getting a fat payday today, Chad.
Well, and how different is it to be dealing with a story that's positive? Rob had mentioned this felt different because it's Tennessee going in a different direction. To me, a positive storyline nationally, right? This is one where national writers are coming in saying, hey, I've got no objection to Danny White at Tennessee. This seems like an incredible move. And then it seemed like when everything was at its darkest on, what was it, Wednesday night, when you had the four key players entering the transfer portal, then the news comes down Thursday with Danny White. Now you've got two players possibly coming back to Tennessee. What has this momentum been like on a positive front for the university and for athletics and the football program?
Well, the old Batman Begins line, it's always darkest just before the dawn, Chad. And, I think that ultimately that's something that's very true. I mean, you look at today, I put this on the general's quarters. I expect Wanye and Henry T to be back. I think Eric Gray's still an X factor. Maybe he's back, maybe he's not. I know that Tennessee's not giving up hope there. And here's the deal. If you get Henry back, he's the leader of that group. I wouldn't surprise me at all to see most of them, if not all, come back to Tennessee and at least go through spring and give this new coaching staff a chance to win them over, which I think, to me, that's a positive. Brent Samaglia, something that's not out there. He's back. You can start looking more and more positives that are out there. I think for Danny White, it's about finding an aggressive, coach. He's very much an offensive type guy, and I'm just going to be interested to see where he goes with this. But clearly, Tennessee, went a certain way, as Brent just noted, with their athletic director hire, which was make him say no. Does Danny White do that with his potential candidates? And what's the money that's been given to him? That to me is a huge question. Is he going to be able to just go out there and say, go get them?
Yeah, no question. I think that's important. Rob, I think another thing that jumped out to me, about his press conference today, aside from what it kind of meant to the fans and what he said to the fans, I thought his message to the student athlete was pretty interesting. We live in a day and age where they want their voice and they expect their voice to be heard more than ever. In a lot of ways, they want more power. They've been empowered in some ways. We've seen that over the course of the last year. And of course, name, likeness, image is something that's out there as well. But for him to openly say today, Rob, that the first thing I need to do is get in a team room, figure out who the leaders are, and talk to them about what they're looking for in a head coach. That's a pretty savvy PR move in your opening press conference. I'm not saying he's going to hire their three recommendations, but to publicly empower them like that, I thought was a pretty slick PR move from this guy today.
And I thought it was kind of representative of, the feel I got from him. And again, no knock on Phillip at all, but just the generational difference that you get with Danny White, his referencing social media multiple times, the fact that what you're talking about, talking to the kids. I mean, he's just connected to this generation, understands this generation in a way that, just from his age. And I don't want to knock on Phillip at all, but it's just different when you're talking about a guy that's, 30 years younger, who has young kids who are on their iPads all day long, who are on Instagram all day long. I mean, he clearly has a feel for this generation. And I thought that was one of the things that stood out the most is that, I can't talk to everybody in the team, but I'm going to talk to the team, have them elect 6 or 7 guys, and I want to hear their feedback. I want to know what they want, what they feel like they need in this program. Now, he's not going to talk specific candidates with them, but he's going to get, what are their 1, 2, and 3 biggest things that they want from a head coach. And I thought that was really savvy.
Rob, it's interesting you bring up the not wanting to knock Phillip Fulmer, because you could almost hear the beep, beep, beep in the press conference when Danny White said, I'm not here to be a placeholder. And he said, that's not to knock anyone else that may have been a placeholder at any point, but I thought that was savvy of him also to it click in his mind to say, this is not me knocking Phillip Fulmer, who was here before me, but he, at least at the press conference, was talking about this being his destination. As at 40 years old, a guy who could be at Tennessee for 20, 25 years if he's doing a good job. The reference of the hot board, and how if I were hired just to go by the traditional hot boards out there and pick one of those 10, then why would they be hiring me? Did that make you guys immediately think about outside the box candidates that he could be targeting that no one's talking about right now?
Well, he was an outside the box candidate, Brent. I mean, nobody had him pegged when this whole thing started, when they looked for an athletic director. Chancellor Plowman sat there and I think even hit her that just a few days ago she sat up there and it was like a morgue press conference announcing all these things. And then today is so different. Just how quickly all this is going down. I think that Tennessee could go outside the box here. And I still go back to what I said a minute ago. How much money are they letting him spend? Are they letting him just go out there and say, tell me no, tell me no? If that's happening, then, who knows where this could come from?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting on the hot board stuff. I don't think he knows what names are really being thrown out there in terms of what the hot board looks like. I don't know that he's got on his phone in the last few hours of this whirlwind and going, hey, what's Volquest put out on their hot board, or what's on whatever outlet out there as a hot board deal. I think his point was, and maybe I'm misreading this, but I think his point was, hey, I'm in charge, and y'all can guess all you want to guess. I'm not going to tell you anything. You're not going to know a step-by-step, blow-by-blow of my travel plans and who I'm talking to, and you got no idea who it might be. Maybe you got lucky and it fell on your hot board, but that doesn't mean you know anything. So, I thought that was kind of the message. Some people took that to mean, Rob, that he's already got a guy. I don't think he's got a guy. He may have some people in mind, but I don't think he's that far down the road. But he's not going to share a whole lot with what he's doing with a lot of people.
No, he said that, what was the comment? Like the players are going to find out who the hire is when I tell them. That's going to be the first place they hear it.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Exactly. Good luck with that. But when you talk about outside the box, he hired Nate Oates. He hired Bobby Hurley, but Nate Oates was a high school coach, 4 years before he got the Buffalo job. And now, he may be the best coach in the SEC. I think this guy's track record is strong when it comes to hiring coach. That's Captain Obvious statement right there. But you look at what Oates did at Buffalo, what he's done. Johnny Dawkins, that wouldn't he flamed out at Stanford. Obviously he saw something in Johnny Dawkins, and you look at the football program, has just been a runaway success at UCF.
It's a great point because Chad, he's hired all kinds of people. He's hired. Johnny Dawkins was thought to kind of be out to pasture.
Yeah,
basketball career was over. Trash heap, dumpster fire, if you will. He goes with a veteran guy there. He pulls a high school coach to be a basketball coach in Nate Oates, and that's turned out great. He's gone Division III in football. He's gone and hired, a coordinator in the SEC and Heupel to be a head coach. He's kind of done. There's not a book on his hiring path, I guess, or his hiring plan, Chad, which I think is intriguing to a lot of people.
When you look at time frame and how this thing was sped up to bring in an AD, would you be surprised if this thing went past, let's say, next Friday? Let's go a week from now in terms of a football coach being in place?
I think it's done by Wednesday. I really do. I think this thing's going to be accelerated. I think he's going to talk to everybody. He's got a list of candidates in his head that meet certain criterias, and he's going to talk to the team and then go from there. But I think it'll be much like, kind of his ascent to the director of athletics. I think he's going to go fast.
I think if he truly listens to what the message is from the kids today when he visits with the football team, I think the resounding thing he's going to hear from them is get me somebody. Because think about these kids, okay? On Monday, they learn that their coach is gone. They get a video goodbye from him. Then all of a sudden, Fulmer walks in and tells them, hey, guys, everything's going to be okay. Okay? Well, then Fulmer's out. Okay? Then Dante Plowman comes in. Hey, be patient, believe in us, trust us, the whole 9 yards. We're going to get you somebody. We're going to do this. Kevin Steele's telling everybody to say, stay. Give us a chance. Give them a chance. They're thinking Kevin Steele's got a chance to be their coach. Today, they're going to hear their fifth message. It's probably going to be the same message of patience, but it's from the fifth person in less than 72 hours. Okay? I think he's going to walk out of that room, and he's going to have an even greater sense of urgency to get a hire, because I think he's going to feel the unrest that this roster has with things right now.
Well, and they should have unrest. Especially those positions that don't have coaches currently with them. Think about being a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman. You don't know who to call when there's a problem. And there have been multiple problems, over the last couple of weeks, and they didn't have anybody to call, especially once Pruitt was out, and then Tennessee really didn't know who to call the players.
I think the other
I think
thing, I think the other
sorry,
thing
Brett,
too,
go
right
ahead.
quick, is Rob, what's Kevin Steele's mindset coming out of his meeting with Danny White today? I mean, look, Kevin Steele has done a remarkable job of trying to hold this thing together. I mean, literally, he's been the guy at the end of the couch where the kids come and sit on the couch and vent about all their problems, or they call him all hours of the night. Does he, Rob, stay committed to this thing until they get a coach, or does his conversation coming out of Danny White today is, you know what? I think I'm gonna pack up my truck and I'm heading back to South Carolina or to Auburn, or does he say, hey, I'm gonna get my money, but I'm not going to work 16 hours a day babysitting kids. I'm going to come in, log in the office, and log back out. That might affect the timeline too, don't you think?
I don't know if it affects the timeline, but I mean, we've talked about this amongst ourselves a lot. I mean, I just think hiring Steele was, I mean, you can kind of understand it. I mean, I think Philip probably saw the writing on the wall and knew he was going to need somebody to babysit for a little while. But I just think that it's incredibly unattractive to a candidate to force an assistant on him. I mean, anybody you want to hire, unless they have a previous relationship with Kevin Steele, they're going to want to bring their own dudes. I mean, that's universal across the board. But I personally think Kevin Steele's in a great spot. I think he's got a chance to make $900,000 for about a month's worth of work.
Is that why the name Tony Elliott keeps popping up? Because of a prior relationship, both with Danny White in previous searches, but also with Kevin Steele?
I think it's more about, go ahead.
I don't know if the Kevin Steele part of it, but I do think I've been told it's the previous searches. He was a factor in 2017 at UCF. And then here's the other thing. And talking to some different people today, apparently, of course, I'm taking this at face value. Apparently, Tony Elliott's a very loyal guy. And so, like, looking at jobs during season is something he's just not comfortable with because he wants to be able to dedicate his whole time to where he's at. This is not in season. So I think there's some real interest there from a guy like Tony Elliott, with Tennessee. We'll see if Danny White reciprocates that, but it would make sense because those two have at least had discussions before.
And that's outside the box.
And it's also not a hire that would have to break the bank for Tennessee to bring in a current sitting coordinator somewhere else. But do you feel like the powers that be are prepared to break the bank if the right current head coach is interested in the Tennessee job?
They set a precedent, didn't they?
Yep.
They're paying somebody somehow, some way. The university's paying $2 million to hire Danny White, over $2 million just to get him hired, to get him out of his contract at UCF. So we'll wait to see exactly how that's going to be managed. Who's paying that? Are they going to do a game swap or whatever? But that's being worked out, I'm told, hopefully this afternoon, being finalized. And then on top of that, they're making this guy one of the highest paid athletic directors in the country. He's got to be top 5, if not top 3 in the country in terms of salary. They're paying a basketball coach $5 million. So the precedent is being laid there to, you can do the old proverbial back up the Brinks truck, Rob, and pay somebody cash, which is ironic because all we've heard about is how they don't have any money. But somebody's finding some money somewhere, it seems like.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that people behind the scenes have stepped up and just have, maybe gas is getting ready to go up 2 cents a gallon a pilot. But the Mike hire to me, you don't go this big on an athletic director if you're going to, try to hire a football coach on the cheap.
Rob Lewis has connection in Saudi oil field somewhere. That's how he knows how the money's going up on a coach.
Perfect time, though, right now, Withrow. Perfect time. You can blame it on the politics.
That's true.
Not UT football.
Well, and it feels like you mentioned it's always darkest before the dawn, that whoever Tennessee hires, that even with an athletic director being hired, it stabilized things a bit. You got players now on social media tweeting out some encouragement about the direction of things. There's some positive press now around Tennessee athletics, which there's not been a lot, especially with football lately. But it feels like anyone that you hire, at least initially, is going to walk in and make an impression on the current roster that could stabilize things in the meantime while they figure out what's going on with the NCAA and what's going to happen next. Do you guys buy into that just having someone in place, whoever Danny White picks, is going to help this roster and get guys back in the fold or keep guys in the fold?
Well, I don't know about you, Brent, but it just feels like having an AD in place. But when there was no AD in place, you knew that the AD hire had to take place before you could even turn the page to hiring a head coach. Now it's like, okay, step one done. We can actually start looking at potential candidates. Even just the players sitting around just looking at things. Just feel. I think there's a little bit cozier feeling now. Whereas I felt like somebody left the door open there a few days ago, and people were walking out into the cold just because it was better than sitting there with nothing to do.
Let's be honest, Rob. People like new. Okay, adults like new. Okay, kids like new. That's why there's 7 million kids in the transfer portal, right? It's about going and getting something new. And so I think the newness of it right now, and the fact that Tennessee is making some news, there's some positive vibes about it, is encouraging to everybody. Now, there are darker days coming. I think everybody understands that. But there is a newness to it, and there's movement. Monday, there was no movement, okay? I mean, Monday was the funeral, if you will. But today, Rob, there's movement, and I think there's encouragement from that. I think that's natural.
I agree completely. And I think the fact that you could convince it, obviously 1.8 million goes a long way towards convincing him. But Danny White had options. He's and would have options next year. Lots of them. The fact that you got him to come here and take this job with the NCAA clouds that are coming, that are hanging over, and nobody knows what that's going to look like. I think that sends a strong message, and I think that having him in charge now expands the pool of realistic candidates that you're going to look at. They see a guy, they don't see a 70-year-old athletic director who they know is not, if they're successful, they're going to be working for a new boss 3 or 4 years down the road. They see a guy where if they have success, he's going to be their boss for the next 5, 8, 10 years. I think it's a big deal.
He hit on the fact that he likes to build and he likes a challenge. Some people are just made up that way. You don't think Theo Epstein's not sitting there going, I built the Boston Red Sox after 100 years into a world champion, and then went to the Chicago Cubs and did the same thing. Some people are just wired that way. So it's my feeling that this guy, he could he have had other jobs? Probably could have, but I think he would love to be able to say, I took Tennessee from a dumpster fire and put them in position to be relevant again.
I thought one of his best quotes or most interesting quotes was, it's a great brand. I like the fact that the brand needs to be polished.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting deal, Rob. I think that's an interesting challenge, and kind of where I wanted to go next with this. And maybe my question wasn't very relevant that I asked, but I think there's a fine line with polishing the brand and completely rebranding or doing a major rebrand with a place that's got a lot of great traditions. He's not going to come in and put cabanas in Neyland Stadium and a lazy river around the stadium. But
he's not.
Well, this guy's not been afraid to mix a lot of things up. And I do think when you go to a big job like this, there is that challenge of innovation without losing kind of who you are and some of the tradition stuff. Now, some people say, you know what, it's time to move on. And I think he kind of hinted at today, like, yeah, you're going to respect and keep tradition, but he's going to keep trying to push things moving forward. And I think that's what it struck me today as something interesting. I do think for him, that's a really fine balance, if you will.
Well, I think the easiest thing to do, Rob, is if you want to get a little more juice and stuff, is to simply go with things that Tennessee's done in the past to create juice. Jerseys, those type of things, to where you don't necessarily mess with things like the ball walk or running through the tee or any of the real tradition-rich stuff, but you would get more innovative and kind of get more with the times. Think about Tennessee really kind of went away from all that. When Coach Pruitt came in, got away from the smoky grays. I think there's a portion of people that I think will want to, get back to the kind of the trendy things, the small trendy things, not like massive overdues, but little things.
I think, and we'll see, but my sense of the guy, just from, a 30-minute press conferences, he gets that stuff, but I don't think he's into the fluff, if that makes sense. Just doing, doing things to garner attention that, just to garner attention. I mean, I think that fan experience, that kind of stuff, I'll be surprised if he doesn't have some innovative ways to get people engaged that are fun and not, just, little idiosyncratic things.
So there are two things, guys, I want to end with you. And I'm not asking you to give me your pick for the head coaching job or anything like that, or who you think Danny White is going to pick. But I just want each of you to give me a name that for whatever reason is just on your mind right now. A coach that you've been thinking about, a coach that maybe has a connection to Danny White, a coach that for whatever reason you've decided to research a bit in the last couple of days. Austin, I'll start with you on the name you're thinking about right now.
I'm gonna go Luke Fickell. I don't know why. He's a trendy name, but I don't think you see a ton of people talking about him. Most people are talking about Lane Kiffin and this and that. So I'm gonna go Luke Fickell as kind of this out of the box type guy.
Rob?
Not that he's out of the box, but I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, most people thought he was gonna wait for Michigan State or Michigan or Ohio State or one of those big or Notre Dame, one of those Big Ten Northern jobs.
He's not Lane Kiffin or Hugh Freeze, so it's outside the box for a lot of Tennessee fans. So I totally know what you're saying with that, Austin. Rob, what about you?
I mean, I don't think they can get this guy because I just don't. I mean, just the vibes. Matt Campbell at Iowa State, I think that's not out of the box by any means. I mean, I think everybody looks at him as a guy who's ready to move up, but just with what he's done at a really, really tough job, I think has been very impressive. And again, it doesn't feel like he's looking to move on or move into a place with all the NCAA issues, but that cat has gotten it done at a really tough spot.
If you want to talk about just somebody nobody's talking about, following up his line of not having the hot boards, does a call go to James Franklin? I see some similarities in the fact that James Franklin's very student athlete oriented, but James Franklin came to Nashville when Vanderbilt had no pulse and hadn't had one in forever. And he generated some organic buzz. It was not slogans. It was not overhyped, but he allowed some access in. If you think about it, he was like one of the first guys to do like a video deal on signing day, and he generated some buzz that way. Would that be a way outside the box guy, outside of other people that we're talking about? I still think that the offensive thing is going to be is going to be really important to him, because those kids, when the 6 to 9 people he talked to said, "What are you looking for?" They go, "Coach, we want to score. We want to score some points." And so, where's the offensive guy out there? I don't think Jeff Levy's ready at Ole Miss, but he's not been afraid to take a chance on a guy who's not perceived as ready. So who's the offensive guy out there that maybe we're not looking at right now as an outside the box kind of unknown name?
And for a big time guy, James Franklin has a pretty manageable $5 million buyout.
And I thought his comments on integrity today was certainly Hugh Freeze directed. And I think it had some Lane Kiffin direction in it too. When you talk about developing role models and that type of thing, I wonder if that had a little bit of a Lane Kiffin vibe to it as well. So certainly, guys, an interesting day on Rocky Top, and Chad, we appreciate you managing this Zoom for us here to help us bounce around. Any quick final thoughts in the last couple of minutes here as we wrap it up, as you got a feel for Danny White today in this search and certainly the direction that there's going on? Any other thing that jumps to your mind?
I just think it's going to come. I think the hire's going to come out of left field, Rob. Just the feeling I get after listening to him today.
Yeah, nothing will surprise me. And again, I'll just go back to what I said to open it up. I mean, for the first time ever in the history, Tennessee really went outside the family, didn't make a safe choice. They were aggressive in turn. I'm talking about an athletic director hire, and hired somebody that's nationally regarded as an up and comer and has no previous ties to the university.
And for the first time in a week, Tennessee's got positive buzz and positive vibes out there about the
in a
direction.
week.
Yeah. This week, I should say. Maybe it's the first time in months. That's right. I said that incorrectly. But some positive juice for Tennessee. We'll see what comes of this team meeting later today. We'll see what comes out of the talks with Kevin Steele. Again, as we noted on the board, he's bringing a couple of guys with him, including a compliance guy, as the overhaul of the athletic department will take place in a variety of places, I think, in the coming weeks, months, and even years as Danny White puts his handprint and thumbprint on Tennessee athletics. That's going to do it for this post press conference wrap up here with Austin Price and Rob Lewis and Chad Withrow. Appreciate you joining us. Have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend, everybody.